to let latecomers come. Has anyone got an idea of how many people are meant to be coming to this?
I'm just having a look at the list of names now of who is on there. I think we're expecting 10, not including myself and you. So I think we might be all in.
Oh, well, that's good then. We'll start at 2:05 anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, I was on mute before, so I was just talking to myself, but to just let everybody know that this is being recorded at Jenny's request, so she can watch it when she gets back to work tomorrow. I'll probably have to edit out the bit where me and my fiance were fussing over how to figure out how to press record. There we go. Everyone see the presentation okay?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so welcome. My name is Pat McCusker. I'm Local Services Coordinator for Yorkshire MESMAC. My day job is HIV prevention and HIV social support. So that's preventing HIV amongst most at-risk populations and looking after those living with HIV to live full, happy lives. So one of the core skills we use in that is motivational interviewing, and we were recently commissioned by Wakefield Council to do some work around increasing vaccine uptake and decreasing vaccine hesitancy using some of the same skills. So I'm going to be leading on your training today. I've been supporting the roving team doing vaccinations in places like asylum hostels, for example. So I've lots to say about encouraging people to take up COVID vaccine if they're feeling a bit hesitant. Okay, so just some housekeeping and ground rules. This is a confidential space, so that means I'm gonna I'm going to be sharing examples from my working life of cases that I've worked with in the past, but I'm not going to be sharing the person. So you might hear me give an example, but I'm not going to be saying such and such from, such and such a street. And likewise, I'd just be encouraging you, if you're going to share something, try and share the case and not the person, okay? This is a safe space and a brave space. So this is a space for you to get your questions answered, and I'll try and answer them to the best of my ability. And also it's a space to be brave. So if you're worried that this is a stupid question, don't be worried. There's no such thing as a stupid question, okay? Everyone here deserves patience, courtesy and respect. I'll be extending that to you if you extend it to me. This isn't counselling. Now, I've put that up there for two reasons. The first is because we're talking about motivational interviewing at length in this, and MI draws on some of the same skill set as psychotherapeutic counselling, but it's different from counselling in a number of really key respects. Psychotherapeutic counselling is a much more involved and complicated skill set. So yeah, you're not going to be coming away from this training as accredited to do motivational interviewing, nor are you going to be accredited counsellors, but you might learn some handy hints and tips, okay, that draw from the skill set. And I've also popped that up there because this might not be the best place for you to unburden yourself of your personal vaccine hesitancy. So yeah, but if you did want to chat about your personal hesitancy, then please go ahead and get in touch with me after. All of you have got your mics off, all of you have got your cameras off. You can turn them on later. There'll be space at the end for us to have a chat, okay? But I've found this training works best when people post things in the comments bar. And it means that I can deal with your concerns sort of head on if there's a really lively chat. So please go ahead and post anything in the comments bar. There will be space for verbal questions at the end. And if you could send any feedback to the email address on screen, I'll be posting that in the chat as well. Okay, so now on to our learning outcomes. So we're going to cover three things today. First, we're going to understand the stages of change as they're related to health behaviours and how they might impact on people's decision to take the COVID-19 vaccination. Second, we're going to understand what MI is, how to adopt a motivational interviewing approach and in response to vaccine hesitancy, and how to understand how to tailor that brief intervention, that brief motivational interviewing intervention to the needs, aspirations of different types of vaccine hesitant client. Okay, so I've got one request from you. Could you please post an example of a vaccine hesitant thought that you have heard said? So something that you might have heard said in your workplace, or what a family member has said. For example, I'm not going to get this vaccine because I'm really worried about blood clots. So if you could post an example of a vaccine hesitant thought, it means I can deal with what's on the ground head on as we move through the training. So yeah, post those in the chat now, please. Okay. So before we move on to our learning outcomes proper, I thought it would be useful just to ground us in a set of facts about how vaccines work and what they do. And to support that, I feel like it's probably best done by reference to this video. So if you just look in the chat now, you can see a video that I've linked to YouTube. And do you remember that bit in the Pantene advert where Rachel from Friends was like, and here's the science bit? Well, this is that bit, and I promise you, it's not going to get more sciencey than this. The rest of it's going to be real. So if you could just have a look at that video now. I'm going to pop myself on mute. Someone give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Okay. So I've got a thumbs up from Hannah there. Shall I get one more thumbs up from someone else and then we'll move on? Fab. Okay. So that video focused more on bacteria. So we have really effective vaccines which work on both viruses and bacteria. So, for example, we've got, if you're of a certain age, or if you work for the NHS, or if you're from a certain part of the world, you've probably got your BTG scar, which is your tuberculosis vaccine, and TB, that's a bacterial infection, whereas we've got COVID vaccines, and as we all know, COVID is a virus, okay, but they all work on the same principle, which is training your immune system how to recognize an infection and fight it off before it has a chance to make you ill, okay. There are over 20 vaccines approved for use in the UK market. Many people have the majority of their vaccines when they're young, but there are some vaccinations that young adults get or people get given on the basis of their sexual behaviour or other risk-taking behaviour. They have been a part of medicine for hundreds of years. So, for example, we eradicated smallpox through an international vaccination programme, and I think we eradicated smallpox in the middle part of the 20th century, and we're almost about to eradicate polio. And interestingly, the polio vaccine that we're using to pretty much eradicate polio is significantly less effective than any of the COVID vaccines that we're currently using. So they all go through the same stages of development. So what happens is that very small studies are done in the lab, and then they're kind of looking at, you know, does this work under a microscope? Does this work in a petri dish, right? And then another study is done usually on animals, and then very small studies are done on humans, where there's like a few volunteers that come in, and the primary endpoints of those studies are safety and effectiveness at preventing illness, okay? And then much larger scale studies are done, where there is like a case control study. So one really large, a randomized, usually placebo, but sometimes they compare against two different vaccines. So they're randomized. One arm gets the vaccine, one arm gets either a placebo or a vaccine for something else. And then they're blinded, so you can't see who's getting the vaccine and who's getting the something else. Then they're unblinded at the end, and outcomes are assessed, and the primary endpoints for those studies are safety and efficacy, so how well it works at preventing illness, okay? Then if those data look promising, they're handed over to an independent regulator. In the UK, we've got the MHRA, and they follow international standards of safety, and they assess this trial study data and make a decision as to whether or not it's going to be brought to market. And the MHRA is certified so far at least 3 vaccines. So we've got the AstraZeneca vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, and the Moderna vaccine, and I believe they're about to approve the Johnson & Johnson single-dose regimen as well, okay? So we also have a system in the UK called the yellow card system, which helps us to flag up any problems with vaccines, because obviously, although the trials may have been conducted on tens of thousands of people, you might see rare problems arise as vaccines are rolled out to many millions of people. So we have a system in the UK which helps flag up any safety concerns if they do develop. Okay, so I really think it's important just to ground ourselves in a set of facts about what vaccines are, how they work, how they improve what they do, because that kind of gives us the skills to answer people's hesitancy concerns. Okay, so I also think it's really important just to understand what we're talking about when we're talking about hesitancy. So the World Health Organization gives a definition of hesitancy there. That last sentence, I think, is the most important. It's influenced by factors such as complacency. So, why would I bother? Convenience. I haven't got time in my life. Or confidence. That vaccine don't do what it says on the tin. I don't trust that. Okay. And those concerns around complacency, convenience, and confidence are a little bit different to anti-vax stuff. Now, anti-vax stuff is thankfully quite rare in my experience at Wakefield district, but it tends to be more political, and it's a wide-ranging conspiracy theory. It often contains a political component, and it tends to presuppose the influence of some powerful, nefarious secret forces in society. So, people pulling the strings, Bill Gates pulling the strings behind the scenes to control our movements and freedoms. So it's a bit different to concerns around complacency, convenience, and confidence. The majority of this training is going to be looking at hesitancy, but we will focus a little bit on responding to anti-vax stuff too. Okay. So now on to our training outcomes. So these are mantras that I take to work. So when I'm doing health promotion, and when you guys are going to be out on the doorsteps on Tuesday and Wednesday, knocking people up and asking them if they want to take this Pfizer vaccine, it would be really good if you just kind of ground yourself in these basic principles, because in my experience, you're more likely to be effective in winning hearts and minds. Okay, so the first one, believe everyone is capable of changing their mind. Okay, now that can be a bit bittersweet, because I'm sure we've all had the experience of working with people where you think, I've not got it in them, the stubborn get. And I'm sure many of us who've worked in healthcare have seen people engaged in, for example, addictive behaviours, which can seem really harmful to the person, and it's easy to give up on that person's ability to change their mind. But I think it's really important for us as professionals to be grounded in and keep faith in the idea that people can change their mind. It's just that you might not be the agent of that change. You might just be a little crumb, right? A kind of little speck on the journey that person takes toward changing their mind and coming to a conclusion about a health behaviour. Okay, so you might not be the agent of that change. Okay, believe everyone's an expert in their own life and health, and listen to that expertise. So I'll give myself as an example here. Like many of us in 2020, my BMI started creeping up, and particularly during the lockdown periods. And if I was a health insurer or my GP, I might be looking at me and thinking, oh, he's put on a bit of timber. There's an increased risk of diabetes 2, an increased risk of cardiac distress, an increased risk of stroke, an increased risk of kidney problems. And I'd be saying, oh, geez, thanks, Doc, but it's been a real stressful time for us all, and I'm a right comfort eater. So right now, I'd rather be chubby and chill than skinny and scared. and I'll lose a few pounds when things have got back to normal, thank you very much. So we've all got that expertise in us about what works best for our body, and good health promotion is led by and listens to that individual's expertise. Okay, so never push, encourage. And I think this is really important when we're thinking about hesitancy. So if you find yourself using should do, must do, have to, really like pointed normative language when you're on the doorstep, you're probably going to end up pushing a hesitant person away from you rather than bringing them into a dialogue. So instead of being pushy, instead of being like the policeman or the teacher, it's good instead to be encouraging. So yeah, I can see the benefit for you. Yeah, it might be good for you if, okay, so letting them feel like they're leading in the decision making instead of you directing them toward a certain goal. You're there really to impart facts and information and help encourage them to work toward a certain goal. Okay. Demonstrate unconditional positive regard. Now, I could talk at length about what this means, and it's a concept that's borrowed from Rogers psychotherapy, but I'll summarize it like this. As well as with your words, think about your behavior. Okay, think, is my body language nice and open? Are my shoulders relaxed? Am I looking him in the face? Am I smiling when it's appropriate to smile? Am I frowning when it's appropriate to frown? Am I demonstrating with my acts and with my words, with my bodies and with my body and with my deeds that I believe in this person's capacity to change, and that I am affirming that belief with the way I behave and the words that I use? Okay. So that demonstration of unconditional positive regard is really important in fostering the kind of environment in which people make changes to their own health. Okay. Next basic principle, believe that every contact counts for something. Okay. So one example I'll give from my HIV work. For many years, I worked with a woman, and over the course of about 6 months, she was off her medication. So, you need to take daily HIV medication if you're going to stay healthy. And over the course of about 6 months, she'd be off her medication. She'd be coming in once a fortnight for a chat with me, which was great. And every time she'd be coming in, I'd be like, oh, got to talk to her about the pills, got to talk to her about the pills, and geeing myself up to have a big chat with her about how important it was to take her pills. And she'd come in and she'd be in bits, she'd be wanting to talk about problems with the hubby, problems with the kids at school, and she'd spend that 45 minutes having a good old cry and a natter, and I'd get 10 seconds at the end to be like, right, next time you come in, can we talk about your pills? And it took about 6 months of us doing this every 2 weeks with my little 10 seconds at the end to be there. Let's talk about your pills next time, for it to come in and say, right, I've given him the boot, he's moved out, I've been into the school, I've read the right act to that ed teacher, and they're doing something about it, and I'm ready to talk to you about getting on a set of medication that's going to cause me less problems with my tummy. Okay, so that drip feeding of information, okay, and that belief that you might just be a bit of a crumb on somebody's journey toward a health outcome is really important principle. Which brings us to our next one, which is try and always go at the speed of the person in front of you. So, it's normal in caring relationships to want to have goals and aspirations for people. It's also normal in healthcare, where you've got specific KPIs, key performance indicators, to want to meet them, right? But you can't push people toward the fulfillment of your KPIs, and you can't push people that you are in a caring relationship, professional caring relationship with, toward a certain goal. You've got to walk alongside them toward that goal. Okay, so for example, there's a young lad who I support whose plan prior to lockdown happening, you know, the whole 2020 shebang, was to go into nursing, and he'd be a bloody brilliant nurse. And every time it comes up, I'm there going, in my head, going, go do nursing, you'd be amazing, go do it, go do it, go do it. But, you know, 2020 put the kibosh on that. He's now working from home, quite happy, doing a bit of call centre work from home. Money's coming in, feels safe, feels stable. And that nursing plan's kind of taking a back step. And that's all right. You know, I still have my wanting to push him towards it. And I think in time, it's a conversation that we're going to revisit, but I can't be pushy about that. It's got to come at his own pace, okay? Which brings us to our next basic principle, okay? And I think this guy might be really important for you guys to reflect on if you're doing door knocking stuff. Now, I've done loads of door knocking stuff for things in the past, and it's normal to get a lot of no's, okay? So try and learn to take no for an answer, okay? And the way to do that is with a bit of humour and grace. You know, be like, no problem, okay? You know, we're not here to tell you what to do. We're not the police. We're not here to enforce anything on you. No problem if you want to decline. Could you tell us why you want to decline? Could we explore that a little bit? But also be prepared for people to just shut the door in your face, because that might happen. And learning to take that with a bit of humour and grace, I think, is a good practice in health promotion, and it keeps you effective at work, okay? So an example of how I would take no for an answer, or an important time that I've taken no for an answer in my career, I worked with somebody who believed that HIV medication wasn't effective, but prayer was the most effective treatment for HIV. And, you know, it was incumbent on me to give that person the facts, which is, you know, prayer might work, it might have a role in keeping you well, but HIV medication's got loads of evidence to support it. And I know HIV medication works, so why not do both? Like, when, you know, one doesn't contradict the other, but their answer was a firm no, okay? And if I hadn't have taken no for an answer, I wouldn't have been able to do all the other work that I needed to do for that person, including like sorting the benefits out, sorting the housing out, and ultimately helping them die with a bit of dignity. And I think it's really important that you try and take no with a bit of humour and a bit of grace, and try and always leave the door open for another chat. So, you know, in the context of door knocking, you might be saying, well, look, you know, we may be around again promoting this sort of clinic. We may be around again. You know, this isn't the only invitation you're going to get to come in to get your vaccine. And if you're wanting a chat about your vaccine hesitancy, here are the places that you might go, in particular your GP. So, you know, you're letting them know that the door is open, and you're not closing down the conversation with rancour, okay, and falling out with folk. So notice that all of those basic principles, they're as much about keeping you well and safe and effective as they are about anybody else, about looking after anybody else. So I think if you kind of bring those principles to the job of talking to vaccine hesitant people, you're probably going to be doing a good job by yourself and by them. Okay. So these are the stages of change. Okay. So I don't know if there's anybody here who's worked in smoking cessation or drug and alcohol services, but you're probably familiar with this model. So model developed in the latter part of the 20th century to think about the steps that people take as they're making their health decisions. Now, if we think of it like an upward spiral, so just taking smoking as the example for now, pre-contemplation, no intention of changing the behaviour. I love fags me, I think I look cool when I smoke, right? Contemplation, our Ian's got lung cancer, or this smoker's cough's getting on me last wick, maybe I should do something about it. Okay. Preparation, right? I've been on that Facebook, I've seen that vaping reduces your risk of cancer. I need something to smoke, I need something in my hand to fulfill that need. But I want to bring down my cancer risk, so I'm booking off Thursday early and I'm getting down that vape shop on Westgate and I'm going to try all them flavours. Action. You're in the vape shop, you've made the decision, you've made the change, you're trying all the flavours. You've thought, right, the one that tastes like baccy's gross, but the one that tastes like popcorn's quite nice and I'm a fan of the vanilla one, so I'm off. I'm maintaining the behaviour, this vaping lark is fine, I'm happy with the health decision that I've made, I've reduced my cancer risk, and then, I've had 2 glasses of cold white wine, I've relapsed because someone's offered me a Marlboro Light and I'm off to that smoking area and I'm back round on that cycle again, okay? So let's do that again, but this time think about COVID-19 vaccination. So most of the population, I would think, is beyond pre-contemplation now. Like most of the population is probably saturated with you're going to have to get vaccinated, make your mind up about it. So most of the population, it might be in a state of contemplation, I would say. And contemplation for a vaccine hesitant person can sound a bit like, I'm not getting any of that muck injected into my arm, or, oh, I'm really scared about blood clots, or, oh, I'm a strict vegan, or I'm worried about this not being halal, or I'm scared of side effects. So contemplation can be that state of umming and ahhing. You know, hesitancy is essentially a state of umming and ahhing about whether or not you're going to take your vaccine, okay? And then you've got preparation, which is, right, Linda down the road had her AZ, she were a bit off it, but I can be a bit off it for a day, that's fine. I've got my text through, or someone's knocked on and they've said there's a clinic on Wednesday, or whatever route it is that people take toward their vaccine. I've made a settled decision, I'm ready to do it. Action, I've gone on Wednesday, I'm in Navi Walk, someone's injecting Pfizer into my arm. Maintenance, 8 to 12 weeks. I felt right off it after that first one. Why would I bother going back? Why would I bother going and having another day off work feeling rough with this vaccine? And then you're back into relapse, which takes us into pre-contemplation again. Okay. So the goal of motivational interviewing is to help help just nudge a person along one step of that journey toward a health behaviour, okay? And one evidence-based and highly effective method of bringing about changes in people's health behaviours is called motivational interviewing. And if this was in real life, we'd be doing a full day's worth of training around this stuff, and I'd be breaking you into little groups and having you practice and do all sorts. But obviously we're a bit limited by time, we're a bit limited by technology, aren't we? So I'm going to give you an overview and lots of examples of NI today, okay? So just to explain what it is, it's a guiding style of communication that sits between good listening. So good listening isn't sitting back and listening to what people are saying to you. good listening is leaning in, right? Good listening is marked by asking lots of questions, being an active and emphatic participant in the dialogue with somebody. Okay, asking lots of clarificatory questions with folk. Okay, so that good listening and that giving of information. So it's part being a good listener and part being responsive and imparting the information that person might need in order to help them come to a settled decision about a health outcome. Okay, it's designed to empower. So there's lots of encouragement in motivational interviewing. Okay, there's lots of affirmations of people's strengths in motivational interviewing, and it empowers by drawing out individuals' meanings for change. So we all know, for example, that the point of the COVID-19 vaccination programme is to bring about, is to reduce the death and mortality associated, mortality and morbidity rather, associated with COVID-19, so death and illness associated with COVID-19. So that's the point of the vaccination programme, that's the meaning of it, but an individual's meaning might be really different. They might be motivated to vaccine because they really want to see their nana. So that's not really to do with population health, that's something to do with their nana, right? And it draws out their own meanings and importance and capacity for change. Okay, and it's based on a respectful and curious way of being with people that facilitates the process of change and honours client autonomy. So what I think is really good to think about is when you're in that chat on the doorstep, there's two people who are experts, right? There's that person that you're talking to who is an expert in living their best life, okay? And then there's you who's knocked on with a little bit of expertise about vaccine, right? And you're flat in that exchange, okay? So it's not like policeman, criminal, or sometimes doctor patient, or teacher student. Okay, it's more flat than that. It's more like two experts in the room, one expert in living the best life, the other with some expertise to bring to bear about vaccination. Okay, and I found a lovely quote. So the purpose of motivational interviewing is to strengthen personal motivation for and commitment to a specific goal by eliciting and exploring the person's own reasons for change within an atmosphere of acceptance and compassion. And I think that last little bit, that atmosphere of acceptance and compassion, is the bit that really rang out for me in that quote. So it's the opposite of an argument. It's the opposite of rancor. It's more a friendly, warm, inviting, pleasant chat, right? Where you're exploring people's reasons for things. Now, I know you're going to have a lot of doors to knock on Wednesday, and there aren't that many of you. So it's going to be tricky to build up rapport really quickly. And it's going to be tricky to instantly build that atmosphere of acceptance and compassion. But I think you might do it by introducing yourself, explaining why you're there, being warm and friendly in your face, showing that you're not a scam, asking, being really open with people. What are your concerns? Are you interested? What are your concerns? Let's explore them. Okay. Assuring people of the confidentiality of their concerns as well. So you're not going to be taking names and addresses, but you might be taking some information about the things that they say to you, but you're not going to be saying him at number 10 what's it street don't want it because he don't want to bleep when he goes through the scanner at Tesco's, right? So assuring them of the confidentiality of it, and affirming their autonomy to shut the door in your face, and to try and accept that with a bit of grace and humour. Okay. So rather than kind of like doing loads of theory about motivational interviewing, I thought I would just explain to you what the core competencies are. So you're probably going to be doing something that's like motivational interviewing if you are asking loads of open questions. Okay, so an open question is something that requires more than a yes or no answer. So, for example, on the 12th, when lockdown lifts and you can be taking the kids down Scarborough, what arcade games are you going to be playing with them? Okay, so there, you've opened up a dialogue about lockdown lifting, you're finding an in about vaccination, you're talking about the return to treasured activities, and it's loads more than just yes, no's. Okay, you're opening up a conversation with someone in which you're an active and willing participant. Okay, the next key skill is evocative questions. So I like to think of motivational interviewing as being, as well as being about facts and figures, it's also about exploring people's emotional landscape and the emotional architecture of people's health decision making. So you do that by asking evocative questions. So once you're all vaccinated and you can get Nana round for tea, what are you going to be making for her? Okay, so there you've built up that, like, you've opened up a dialogue about that trusted and treasured relationship, returning back to normal life. You've brought up how vaccination is going to be a tool in that return to normality, and you've brought up a whole bunch of feelings about a treasured relationship, and that's something that you can build on and explore in conversation with that person. Okay, I appreciate you're not going to have tons of time to be doing this on the doorstep, but it is good practice. The next one is affirmations of strength, right? So you say to somebody, what you're feeling hesitant about? Why don't you want it? And they say to you, right, I've been on that Facebook, I've been reading loads of stuff about blood clots. I'm worried that it contradicts my faith, that it might be halal, that it might not be halal rather, or that it might contain fecal cells, or I'm worried that it contravenes my dietary habits because I'm a strict vegan, or I'm scared of being off it because I'm the main breadwinner, and I can't be taking a day off work. So it's difficult really to hear, but what they've done there is they've gone and done a load of independent research, haven't they? They've gone and looked it up. They are in a state of contemplation, and you want to affirm that strength. So I would be saying something like, right, well, it sounds like you've been really giving this some serious thought, haven't you? And that's really good. We want people to be active citizens. We want people to be taking this seriously and giving it a good thought, giving it a good think through. What I'm here to do today is to give you some information now that might help steer you toward a decision, and I can assure you that this is halal, it's vegetarian, that the Pope has deemed this morally acceptable. So you affirm their strength in wanting to seek out health information. Okay, so if they hit you with hesitancy, it says it's brilliant that you've been doing your own research. However, I'm here to impart the facts as I understand them as well. Okay. Reflections. Now, people get a bit confused with reflections, and they sometimes think it's parroting back the thing that somebody has said to you, but it's more than that. It's kind of holding up a mirror to the feelings that people are giving to you and checking out if they're the right feelings. Okay, so someone hits you with that shopping list of concerns. I'm dead worried about blood clots, May. Our Sheila down the road, she were off for a full week after she had her AZ. I'm reading all the stuff about government control and 5G on Facebook, and it's freaking me out, right? And I just also, I'm a bit worried about it hurting. Like, I don't like being prodded with needles. I don't think anyone does, do they? So, what you're doing there, if you were to do a reflection, is to say, okay, it sounds like you're feeling anxious. It sounds like you've got some health anxiety around side effects, and you're worried that you're going to be off it. It sounds like you're feeling mistrustful because you're saying that there's stuff in this vaccine that isn't being widely advertised, and that might do you some damage. And it sounds like you're worried about not being able to make money because you might be the main breadwinner in your family. So is that right? Okay, so that's a reflection. Okay, so it isn't parroting back the thing that they've said, it's holding up a mirror to the feelings they've expressed, okay, or taking a guess and saying, is that right? And I would say that is the most foundational skill of motivational interviewing, because it is how we express empathy with one another. By checking in with each other's emotional states, we express empathy with one another because we can have a conversation about how the feelings feel, if that makes sense. And then there's summarizing. Someone hits you with that shopping list of concerns. You say, okay, let's get this right. Number one thing you're worried about is blood clots. Number two thing you're worried about is being off it, side effects. Number three thing you're worried about is misinformation on Facebook, right? Let's deal with those in that order, shall we? Because these are the way that you've brought it up to me. So I'm summarising, I'm reflecting, and I'm making sure, and I'm asking an open question. Are these in fact the things that you are worried about? Okay. And then a next key skill is attending to the language of change. So I like to think of this one as being listening out for that golden nugget. And sometimes, the thing about golden nuggets is they're really well hidden, aren't they? And they're quite difficult to find. But someone hits you with that hesitancy. So someone hits you with all that sustained talk. I'm not going to change my behavior because I'm hesitant. But what you're looking for is change talk. And sometimes that can be really well hidden. So, for example, they hit you with that list of hesitancy concerns. I'm really worried about blood clots, May. Our Sheila down the road was off it for a week when she had her first AZ. I've been reading loads of stuff on Facebook about microchips or what have you. I'm worried about being off it. I can't be doing that because I'm main breadwinner, me. Okay, so you've got there your list of hesitancy concerns, and you might be thinking, hey, where's the golden nugget and all that lot? Well, I would be saying, oh, so someone who's had the vaccine, do you? Sheila down the road, how's she getting on now? Is she back at work? Is she had a second? And I would be venturing my own vaccine story there. I'd be saying, yeah, do you know what? When I had my first, I was feeling a bit rough as well. It wasn't 5 days, but I was definitely off it for a day. When I had my second, felt a bit tired, but I was all right. Didn't have to take any time off work. But I tell you what, I feel a lot less anxious about getting COVID. And if I were to get COVID, I'd legally have to self-isolate for 10 days, which would way more impact on my ability to get money in. Okay, so you listen out for that golden nugget and you build on it. Okay, and you recognise as well, as I said before, it's about an exchange of information, and it respects that both people in the conversation have got expertise. You're sharing stuff about vaccines, They're sharing stuff about living their best life. Okay. So for those unfamiliar with motivational interviewing, who've never done it before, me and my colleague Mark prepared a highly embarrassing video of us demonstrating all the core skills of MI that are up on the page there. It's quite long, so I'm not going to ask you to watch it now, but I'm going to ask you to click on the link and watch it after the training, okay? And just consider when you've watched it, where Mark started out and where he might have got to at the end, okay? So I think that Mark started out in a state of contemplation. You know, he said, I can't remember what he says now, that he'd had his letter, he'd had his text, right? So he started out in a state of contemplation, and ahhing and feeling a bit hesitant. And toward the end of the conversation, I think we might have just inched Mark toward a state of preparation. But in my experience, it might have taken a bit more time to reflect on Mark's part, or a bit more time chatting, you know, another go to get him toward a state of action. So I think it might be really important for you to reflect that you could be doing all this stuff on the doorstep if you've got time and you've got people who are willing participants in a conversation with you. You still might be hearing no, and you might tick the no box on your sheet, but you might be surprised after people have had a bit of time to consider things that it turns out that they do turn up. Okay, or you might be surprised if you go out knocking again that hearts and minds may have changed, because it does often take more than one go and more than a few minutes to come to a settled decision about a complex health outcome. So try and not get too disheartened is what I'm trying to say to you. Okay, you are doing a really good job by these people by going out and having these sorts of chats with them. Okay. So you might be thinking, what's all this got to do with vaccine hesitancy? What's all this motivational interviewing and all these skills got to do with vaccine hesitancy? Well, the big study that's been done has shown that people's beliefs about COVID-19 vaccination are shaped by their understanding of 5 key central issues. Plus one more, I think. So those 5 are the potential collective benefit of the vaccine. So that's like, nobody else is going to get that. Why would I bother? Or they're offering me the 65% one. Why are they offering me the 65% one when there's a 95% one out there? I aren't bothering with that 65% one. I want the 95% one, right? So that's, you know, concerns around the potential collective benefit, or, you know, some hesitancy is couched in the likelihood of COVID-19 infection without the vaccine. So that's, I'm all right, mate. All this COVID stuff's overblown. I've been fine working from home. I'm fine with hands, face space. Why would I take a day off work going to get that vaccine? All of this is stuff and nonsense. Okay. Or there's people's beliefs about the effectiveness of the vaccine. That's usually couched in a language of mistrust. So that's, I don't believe this vaccine does what it says on this tin. I don't trust these politicians. I don't trust these scientists, me, right? So that's usually couched in a language of mistrust. Or then you've got concerns about the side effects of the vaccine, and that can range from a whole gamut of stuff, right from I'm concerned about it being a bit ouchy and I don't like needles, me, to I don't want to be off it for a day because I'm the main breadwinner in my house, to I'm concerned that this vaccine's going to alter my DNA, or I'm concerned that this vaccine's going to have long-term side effects that people haven't found out about yet, or I'm worried about microchips in it and I'm worried I'm going to go bleep through the scanner when I go through a Tesco's. So it's a whole range of stuff, but it's important to recognise that concerns about side effects are usually couched and are usually expressed as a form of health anxiety. So, you know, it's best to work with them as a type of anxiety, okay? And then you've got people who are concerned about the speed of vaccine development, and that can be voiced in lots of different ways. So that could be voiced as, hey, there's no way they could have done that quick. So that's a bit of mistrust, isn't it? Or, oh God, it's all too fast, it's overwhelming, it's right, it's scary for me, this. So that's more anxiety, isn't it? So you respond to those things in different ways as we're going to explore through the rest of the training. And the final thing is entrenched anti-vax belief, you know, that kind of like entrenched conspiratorial way of thinking about it. So the majority of the training is going to be looking at those 5 hesitancy factors. And you know, what I would encourage you to be doing is listening carefully in each case and figuring out which one it is, okay? And, you know, to help you drip feed information, I believe that someone's putting together some FAQs. Dasha from the CCG's kindly sent through a document. I believe Jenny's doing a bit of a sheet for you to be working with on the doorstep as well. I'll be sending out some debunking resources, some other bits for you to take a look at. But listen carefully, you know, which one is it of them 5, or is it entrenched anti-vax stuff? Okay. Okay, so within a motivational interviewing, how would you respond to interviewing framework? How would you respond to somebody who's got concerns about the potential collective benefit? Okay, so with this kind of client, I don't think hitting him with loads of facts and figures is going to be particularly effective. I think you more want to try and cultivate some positive emotions. Okay, so it depends on you know, the age cohort, but sometimes I like to think of it as cultivating a bit of blitz spirit, or if I'm working with a younger person, you know, younger people are often really concerned with matters of social justice. So I'm saying, you know, it's a big collective effort. We can end the disproportionate impact of COVID on BAME communities. We can end that scourge of unemployment. You know, we can live in a more just society. If I'm working with a younger cohort, we're more interested in social justice. But in each case, what I'm doing there is I'm counteracting some of the negative feelings and I'm cultivating some hope, some empathy, some feelings of connection toward fellow people. And that kind of hope and empathy can be a really big motivating factor for people to go and take up their vaccination. And also think about telling a story, either about your own or somebody else's vaccination and how it's helped them return to a treasured activity. So here's the one I'm telling, right? So over the lockdown period, me and my dad, who's 74, we decided, right, we need to live closer together. So dad's decided to sell up. He's going to be moving into mine temporarily whilst he gets a house sorted up in Leeds. We're going to be closer together. Vaccination makes that possible because, you know, I'm not going to be, you know, he's 74, therefore higher risk of COVID. I'm at less risk of passing that on to him. He's at less risk of passing it on to me. So it makes the whole moving process safer. And it means that we get to achieve our goal of having a closer relationship where we see each other more often. And telling that kind of pro-social story about people returning to their treasured activities and seeing their loved ones is, I think, an important and motivating way of responding to people who've got concerns about the potential collective benefit of the vaccine. Also, yeah, try and figure out, are they caught up in the trial efficacy data? Now, you're in a really fortunate position because you're going to be going out promoting this Pfizer vaccine, and the efficacy data in the Pfizer trials was really, really high. You know, people were quoting numbers in the high 90s after one dose, and, you know, definitely after 2 doses. You know, but you'd want to be encouraging 2 doses for long-term protection, but people were still quoting efficacy in the 90s, 70s to 90s after 1 dose. You know, people think of it, they might have read about it in the newspaper as the more effective vaccine, but that isn't strictly true, right? The thing is about trial efficacy data is it's more of a photo than a film. So it's a snapshot of a particular moment in time with a particular cohort, and it reflects how well the trial performed within the parameters of that snapshot. And it just so happens at the time that the AZ trial was happening, there was loads more COVID knocking about in the cohorts that they were studying than there was at the Pfizer trial. So, you know, what we want to do is move people away from that like 65, 95 trial study data stuff toward real world effectiveness and telling a positive story about that big steep decline that we've seen in infection and in death and hospitalisation since the rollout of all vaccination. And I'd also be saying, right, if you are worried about that trial efficacy stuff, you're going to be given Pfizer at this clinic anyway. Okay, but what we can see is for all them vaccines, there's that big steep decline, which means that we get as a society to return back to a bit more of life as normal. Okay, so try and move them away from the efficacy data and toward real world effectiveness. Okay. Okay, so responding to sort of ambivalence or apathy about the likelihood of COVID-19 infection without the vaccine. So this is people who are a bit like, I'm all right, mate. What would I need that for? Right? And often when you're talking to somebody who's voicing that sort of hesitancy, it's because they're a bit sort of checked out. You know, oftentimes it comes from a place of being a bit overwhelmed, and they kind of check out and they become a bit engaged, ambivalent or apathetic about stuff. And because of that, it might be that they are very much underestimating the risk of transmission or severity, and it might be really helpful in that case to be pointing them to loads of trusted factual information, or to be able to have snappy one-liners to hand, which you will have with your FAQs and your debunking resources and stuff that are going to get shared with you. I think it's a good idea to try and pitch it at an emotional level as well. So when somebody's a bit emotionally disengaged, apathetic or ambivalent, oftentimes that's kind of like the opposite of, it's like they've numbed themselves to feeling anxious. Okay, it's like a kind of numb emotional place, and I think it's okay to safely hold a space where you might trigger just a bit of anxiety to push them toward, or to guide them toward, rather, not to push, to guide them toward making a health decision. And you do that by pointing them to trusted factual sources of information about the level of risks that they're at. So I'd say, like, yeah, what is it that you're reading? Where are you getting your COVID information from? Is it the BBC website? You know, is it the NHS website? Establish what trusted sources there are and what they're looking at. Or if you've got your snappy one-liners and your cheat sheets and stuff, you know, looking down and saying, right, so you know, they might be saying to you, I'm 40 years old, mate. I go out jogging twice a week, twice a day. I'm nice and fit and healthy. I've got no anticipation that I'd get sick if I get COVID. I'm nice and young. I'm nice and fit. Why would I bother? Right? And, you know, in that case, I would be saying two things, I think, if I were on the doorstep. One, the reason why we're here today is because there's a variant of concern in the neighbourhood and we're trying to get that sorted out. You know, and that variant of concern is highly transmissible. So we're trying to bring down the rates of COVID in the neighbourhood. So, you know, you are at risk. Otherwise, why would we be knocking on? And two, yeah, you might be right. You know, you might not be the sort of person who we would be concerned about needing ventilation should you get COVID, but there's no way we could guarantee that you wouldn't, right? And also, you know, you would be at risk of long COVID. And if you love running, if you're out running twice a day or whatever, that means that, you know, you put that at risk. You might find yourself being off it definitely for 10 days while you self-isolate, and your fitness might be lower for some months to come. So we don't really know what the long-term impact of getting COVID is, or what it might be on your ability to go out running. But we do know that, you know, you getting your vaccine, you know, at worst, we're probably thinking about a couple of days feeling a bit off it with side effects, and then you'll be protected against long COVID. So I think it's really important, and I don't know if there are many clinicians on the call, but always to be talking in terms of relative rather than absolute risk. So I'll just unpack that a little bit. Your absolute risk is, you know, just as Joe Public, member of the population, what your odds are of getting an illness over the space of a year. So, you know, oftentimes you'll hear that expressed as there's a prevalence of 43 in 100,000, or there's an instance of such and such and such and such. But for people who are emotionally apathetic or ambivalent, oftentimes they'll hear that and go, well, so what? I'm the exception. So I believe I'm the exception to that rule because I've been getting on fine since, you know, for now, sort of thing. So instead of doing that, instead of giving that number, right, you ground it in their lived experience. You say, well, you might be at risk of long COVID. You might be at risk of if you're in a multi-generational household, you might be at risk of passing that on to your vulnerable nana. You know, so what we're here doing today is responding to the fact that you are a person at risk, and we want to help you reduce that risk. Okay, so it's about relative rather than absolute risk that helps motivate, I believe, ambivalent or apathetic clients. Okay, so next hesitancy factor, responding to concerns about the effectiveness of the vaccine. So I would be recognising that concerns about the effectiveness of the vaccine are often expressed in a language of mistrust, and you can build trust through doing lots of active listening, through, you know, behaving like a trustworthy person, but behaving like somebody who cares about somebody else's well-being, and showing that you're meaning it. So what would be bad practice if someone's expressing levels of mistrust about effectiveness is to be dismissive. So no, oh, don't be so bloody daft, right? But instead, lots of empathy, so lots of active listening, lots of reflection, and taking it slow. So if someone's mistrustful, you might be longer on their doorstep than someone who's apathetic, if that makes sense. You might take your time a bit more with this client, okay? you know, as well, it's going to be difficult for you to do this because you won't have a pre-established relationship. But it is good practice if in future to build on natural chemistries. So there are people who in my team that don't get on with me, but they do get on with Mark. And vice versa. And if we know if they ring up, one person gets handed to Mark and the other person gets handed to me, if that makes sense. So they're more likely to hear the information from someone that they trust. Okay. And I think there's also a recognition that mistrust of science can be higher in certain communities. So pointing to positive role models from that community can be really motivating for people in coming to a settled decision about vaccination. So, for example, when we've been doing our vaccine hesitancy workshops with our asylum seeking cohort, we've been getting in refugees who've, got their status in the UK, and we've been using them as peer translators. So, I might be there giving it chapter and verse about the facts to do with vaccine, but they'd be there as peers advocating for the use of vaccination and also sharing their own story as somebody who looks like them, who's been through the same experiences as them. So if you've got someone who's really mistrustful, you can say, right, there's a role model from your community who's a big advocate for vaccine. Go and have a listen to what they say. Okay, so that's probably going to have a bit more of an impact than you reading chapter and verse about scientific fact. So think about, before you go out, who is there from, so there are lots of Pakistani people who live in Abrig, lots of Polish and Lithuanian and Hungarian people who live in Abrig, lots of white British people who live in Abrig. So maybe go and do a bit of research about what figureheads from those communities are saying about vaccination and why they're vaccinating. Okay. Okay, so responding to anxiety. Now, I think this one is your most common hesitancy factor. Okay, so yeah, thinking through how to use motivational interviewing to respond to vaccine anxiety. I think it's good to think about what anxiety feels like and where it comes from, because it's amongst the more somatic, in the body type feelings, isn't it? Like, together with like hysterically laughing or sobbing or horny, these are sort of emotions that you feel very much in the body, and you feel it as a tightening of your chest, bit white knuckle. It's sort of excited but overwhelmingly excited, or it's kind of like scared crossed with excited sometimes. So, it's a bit of a mixed up feeling, but it's definitely, it's very much in the body, very much in the chest and the shoulders, or at least it is for me. What you do when you feel that way, and as I'm sure all of us on this chat have, is you reach for a tried and trusted self-soothing mechanism. So if I'm at home like I am now, my tried and trusted self-soothing mechanism would be 30 minutes on the Nintendo playing Animal Crossing New Horizons until I've chilled out. Okay, so you when you feel anxious, you reach for the thing that's going to make you feel better, and that kind of reaching for the thing that makes you feel better can lead to avoidant behavior. So instead of doing the thing that you need to do, or doing the thing that you're conscious that it's probably best for you to do, you get so wrapped up playing Animal Crossing that you don't do it. So I would say that most people's hesitancy concern that I've been working with recently is usually couched in a language of anxiety, and it's usually couched in a kind of concern about side effects. So there's two things I think that, well, one big thing that puts you in an advantage. One, you're there offering Pfizer, so there's no relationship between Pfizer and rare blood clots. Okay. So, you know, if people are saying, I've been reading all this stuff about blood clot stuff, you can say, well, you know, we're offering you a vaccine that has got no relationship. There's no proven evidence that there's an increased risk of blood clot with this vaccine. So that kind of cuts through that one dead quick, doesn't it? You know, so your risk benefit conversation there is, well, there isn't any risk, there's only benefit. Yeah. But I think it's also important to offer an honest and brief narrative story about side effects. So the way I'm doing that is, yeah, you know, when I had my first AZ, I was off it. I had a bit of a duvet day, me. I was feeling a bit rough, but had to take a bit of paracetamol. Was in bed, used it as a bit of an excuse to binge a bit of telly, but then I was back to work. Then I had my second one, and to be honest, I was just feeling a bit knackered, a bit tired, but totally able to go to work, no probs. And now I'm feeling loads less anxious about getting COVID. Now I'm feeling loads less anxious about giving it to my dad, right? Because I've had both doses. So I know that there's a significant reduction in my risk of getting it, getting ill from it, and I know that there's quite a substantial reduction in my risk of passing it on to my dad. So, you know, what you're doing there is you're offering a brief, honest, reassuring story, and you're kind of helping them build that story into the architecture of what they do when they self-soothe about this stuff. So you might say something like, you know, you might find your health anxiety reduces once you've had your vaccine and you're not living in a state of fear about COVID. Okay. So yeah, also offer trusted, factual information, but be led by their readiness to engage with it. So they might be saying, I'm really scared about side effects in pregnancy, for example. And you're going to have something on your cheat sheet, on your card, you know, the FAQs that you're going to be walking around with, which says, you know, some facts about the safety of vaccination in pregnancy. Or they might be saying, I'm really worried about becoming infertile, right? And you're going to have something on your FAQs, on your cheat sheet, your card, which says there's no way this is going to make you infertile, right? And you're probably going to have a reference with it as well. You know, this has come from the CCG. This has come from a very trusted source, you know, peer-reviewed source, or it's come from the trial efficacy data. You know, so it's come from a very trusted place. But if they are super anxious, it might be that that's quite overwhelming for them to hear. You know, you might end up pushing them, you might end up increasing the anxiety. So again, like with the mistrustful clients, you might spend a bit more time trying to build a bit of trust and a nice calm atmosphere on the doorstep with this person before you're hitting them with the facts. Because hitting them with the facts straight off the bat might increase their anxiety and therefore increase their avoidant behaviour and their likelihood to come and get the vaccination on Wednesday. So be led by them, you know, say, I've got something here written on my sheet which is certified to be factual by the CCG or by the NHS that speaks directly to the concern that you're expressing. Would you like me to tell you what it is? Okay, so be led by them. That's good practice. Okay. Also recognise, you know, one big hesitancy factor is concerns around needle phobia, and that's usually expressed as anxiety. So I deal with needle phobia all the time. And needle phobia, it tends to be born out of like two core beliefs, or sometimes a mixture of two core beliefs. One is a belief that the bore of the needle is going to be like that, so massive, it's going to really hurt. And the other is that there's a risk of contamination, you know, that it's dirty. And sometimes they can be happening at the same time, or sometimes they're a bit different. But working with those who are feeling phobic of needles because they're worried about it being ouchy, so they're worried about the bore being like that, I would be saying, okay, you must have had injections before in your life, you will have done, and they might have hurt a bit, but you haven't sustained any serious injuries from them, right? The needle that they use is very fine. It's a very fine bore. And then I would, you know, I would often say, if I had the time, this is the bit of their arm that you're gonna get vaccinated in. Make that nice and floppy. Don't tense your muscle. Just make it nice and floppy. Okay. So there it is. Just give yourself a good, actually it's a bit lower, it's about there, isn't it? So give yourself a good pinch there. Don't draw blood, but give yourself a good hard pinch. Chances are it's going to hurt less than that. So, you know, it gives them a good reassuring narrative about the level of ouchiness that they're going to endure. Okay. And then there's responding to people who have got concerns about contamination. So I've had the experience of giving someone a HIV test and then them going, bloody hell, you've just gone and given me HIV, would you have me with a dirty needle? So, you know, with that, I think it's important that we just reassure people, if they are expressing that concern, that nurses are trained to work to standards of universal precaution and sterility. All the needles are single use, and you can see them break sterile packets in front of you. Everything's going to be wiped down, so your risk of getting COVID whilst being vaccinated is really well managed. Okay. The COVID vaccination itself doesn't contain anything that's going to cause contamination. So it doesn't contain COVID, for example, but it does contain stuff that might stimulate an immune response in you. So you might be feeling a bit sweaty, you know, you might be feeling a bit sort of shivery for a day or two. That isn't a sign of contamination. That's a sign that your immune system's kicking in and you're getting protected against this virus. So that's a good sign. It's no sign of contamination. It's a sign that your body's working. Okay. So recognizing as well that there are some health anxieties that may be way beyond the scope of a brief intervention, particularly one on the doorstep. So sometimes, you know, just examples from my work in HIV, I'll get people coming in wanting an HIV test. I'll give an example. I have someone come in fairly regularly who is really concerned about getting HIV because they sometimes, you know, when you stood at the urinal, you stand in a puddle of piss, right? No one's got HIV standing in a puddle of piss. So I would be saying with that person, I'd be doing some contracting with them. Okay, so I want to reassure you that you're HIV negative and this is a low risk thing, but I don't want to be affirming your false belief that you can get HIV from standing in a puddle of piss. So we'll do this reassurance, we'll do this peace of mind test, but I'm going to be contracting with you. If you're coming back and this hasn't worked and it's not chilled you out or giving you the reassurance that you need, that I'm going to be referring you for some talking therapies, because I think that's more what you need. And you might be finding on the doorstep that there are people who've got some like really intense and entrenched health anxieties around COVID, because it has been a bit of a disruptive year for everybody, hasn't it? So, you know, you might be thinking, I'll try my best, I'll give the information, but I'll end this conversation by saying, have you thought about speaking to your GP? Have you thought about speaking to Turning Point? You know, would you like me to take your name and number, or would you like me to give you a referral or to signpost you to someone who might be able to spend a bit more time with you than I can on the doorstep, exploring what your anxieties are? So recognising what your boundaries are, recognising where you would need to refer or to signpost. Okay. Now, responding to concerns about the speed of vaccine development. So this is a funny one, and it can be expressed in lots of different ways. So is it expressed as mistrust? Like, I don't trust these scientists to have done that. No way they could have done that fast. Is it expressed as apathy and disengagement? What a load of rubbish. No way they could have done that fast. Or is it expressed as anxiety? Like, oh, it's all so overwhelming. This just feels like it's been rushed through this one, and it's making me feel dead scared. Because in each case, you'd respond differently, wouldn't you? Okay, so it's not a one-size-fits-all response to people who voice this kind of concern. But in each case, I think it's important and incumbent on us as health professionals to maintain a really clear line. And that line is that all vaccines have been rigorously checked by multiple independent regulators internationally and certified as safe and effective. And then I'd also be telling a story about the numbers. So I think the sort of folks who are like, concerned about the speed of vaccine development, they're a bit like the kind of people who they don't like being first up at the buffet. Whereas I'm like, buffet's open, I want my vol au vent, I'm up there, for, you know, paper plate in hand, or there's pineapple and cheese on sticks, I'm having that. So I'm up there straight away. Whereas other people, they like to hang back, don't they? You know, they'll let someone else get the pineapple and cheese on a stick first before they go and get theirs, because they want to make sure it's nice and not horrible. So what I think you can do with those sorts of people is tell a really positive story about the numbers, which is like millions of people in the UK have had first and second doses now. We're talking about almost 50% of the population or more now, isn't it, have had first. And we're catching up. So I think the plan is that everybody over 50 is going to have had their second by June. You know, so you're far from first up at the buffet. Now, there's loads of people been at the buffet before you. You're not no guinea pig, right? And I think that kind of reassurance that they're part of a big group effort, this isn't like some sort of crazy experiment that's focused on them, is probably what they're going to need to hear. And I think this one will get a bit better over time as people get used to the idea of the buffet being open. Okay, so finally, responding to anti-vax conspiracy theory. Now, fortunately, in my experience, this sort of stuff has been a bit low in Wakefield district. Most of the hesitancy concern that I've experienced when doing my workshops, particularly with asylum seekers and refugees and stuff, has been that kind of other hesitancy stuff. And this stuff has been a bit low, but you might get it on the doorstep. So it's important to think about how you'd respond. So again, I think, you know, within a motivational interviewing framework, it's a good idea to think about where this has come from. So conspiracy theories arise when people have perceived a threat to their stability and well-being, and they're often expressed as hypervigilance and shared as a concern for your well-being. So let me unpack that for you. You've moved house. You're 2 days in to your new place. First day in, you've noticed a normal amount of curtain twitching. You've noticed a normal amount of neighbours coming up and introducing themselves. You're feeling overall pretty safe, but you're like, does that sofa match that room? Half my stuff still in boxes. I'm all 6s and 7s. You know, I've had this big moving's bloody stressful, so I'm all over the shop, right? Unbeknownst to you, there is a group of naughty kids running around the neighbourhood playing 3 a.m. knock and run. Your second night in, 3 a.m. someone's bang, 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 bang on the door. Think about how you're going to share that risk assessment with your partner or with the person that you live with, right? I won't be saying, excuse me, sweetie, can we put half an hour aside after dinner to talk about the knocks on the door? I'd be saying, get up, you big snoring get, someone's here to nick the bloody telly, right? And the reason why I'd be doing that is because, you know, he likes playing Animal Crossing too. So I'm concerned for his welfare. So what's happened there is I've made a risk assessment based on the fact that I'm feeling quite unstable. It's stuck around, you know, and it's being voiced as hypervigilance for my partner and myself's well-being. And it's going off like a bloody siren, isn't it? But also crucially, you know, I've presupposed that there's nasty, horrible burglars when actually it's just naughty kids, right? So it don't match up with reality, okay? So it's not nasty, horrible burglars, it's just naughty kids. And, you know, you can go out and bollock naughty kids, can't you? Tell them sod off. Whereas burglars, it's a bit of a different question, right? So that, I think, is a bit of the psychology of where anti-vax conspiracy theories come from. They're like a 3 a.m. knock and run risk assessment that's sort of stuck around, and they often go off like a big whirring siren, okay? And I would say, broadly speaking, there are two approaches to that. Now, you are going to be limited in dealing with this sort of stuff because you're on the doorstep, so you're not going to have long. So you might be limited, I think, to doing head-on debunk stuff. Okay, so head-on debunk. I'm just going to post in the chat now 2 really good resources. Actually, 3 really good resources in dealing with conspiracies about vaccine, one about COVID. Where have you gone? So that's about COVID. And then a third one, which is by the British Islamic Medical Association, which is their debunking and myth-busting facts site. So yeah, before you go out on Wednesday, have a read of those to get yourself into a mindset of dealing with some of the more common conspiracy theories around COVID-19 vaccination. Okay, so yeah. You've got 2 options, I think. There may be more than 2, but here's the 2 that I've been doing. One's head-on debunk, and I think you're probably going to be limited to that on the doorstep. And that sounds a bit like this. I don't want to fall out with you. I'm not looking for an argument. But I'm just concerned that the thing that you've told me, I believe that not to be true. And in fact, I believe that the truth is that these vaccines are safe, they're effective, and you are a person at risk who needs one. Okay, but you know, I totally respect your you don't believe that. I totally respect your right to say no to me. I aren't here to force you to do anything, but I believe that thing that you've just said to me is false, but I respect your right to believe it. Okay, so you know, what's the benefit? The benefit might be it works. You know, they might change their mind, and you know, they might be down the clinic on Wednesday getting the vaccine. The risks, though, What you might end up doing is inadvertently and tacitly affirming their false belief to be true by saying that it's okay to disagree and it's all right, you believe what you believe, when in fact what they believe is false, right? So that's a risk. You probably not do no harm trying to go on for that head-on debunk approach, but you might experience a firm no and a shutdown of a conversation and a slamming of a door. Okay. Then there's my preferred approach, which is the feelings first approach. And I think this one needs a bit more time, but you know, so someone says to me, there's no way I'm getting that vaccine. I have seen all sorts of stuff all over on my socials saying that there's microchips in it. I've seen videos of the microchips under people's skin. I've seen loads of evidence that Bill Gates has been investing in secret vaccine companies and all this sort of stuff. And you know, there's no way I would do this. And I think other people that do this, they are sheeple. They are being led by the nose into being surveilled. Okay, so rather than going in with a "I'm afraid I think you're wrong," I would say, tell me more. I would say, so it sounds like you've been doing a lot of research, which is great. You know, we want people to be active and engaged citizens. We want people to be learning about their own health and their well-being. So that's great. But it sounds like you feel like you're being really surveilled right now, and that must feel scary. Is that right? You know, tell me how it feels to believe that there is a global conspiracy which is trying to force you into a surveillance state. Tell me how it feels. You must have people in your family who disagree with you strongly and who've gone and got their vaccination. You tell me how it feels to have fallen out with them. You know, it must be weird that you and your Auntie Barbara, who used to really get on, you've fallen out because she's gone and got her AZ and you think she's like being drawn by the nose into a surveillance state. Let's unpack that, right? And in that unpacking, you might find yourself discovering that golden nugget stuff that I was talking about before. In that unpacking, you might move them from sustained talk into kind of change talk. So, you know, you might get into it about how Barbara was. You know, is Barbara now in fact bleeping when she goes through the scanner at Tesco's? Not to be glib about it, but you know, you might be able to draw out some of their meanings and guide them toward a challenge of their worldview. So, yeah, also know your limits, right? You're probably going to be limited to saying, I think that's false, because of the number of doors you're knocking on that day. And you don't want to be getting into rows with people. You know, you're there to do your best, but if they want to say no, they're going to say no. So, you know your limits and keep those basic principles in mind. They can change their mind, okay? They're free to change their mind. You've done your bit by being a little crumb along the journey toward them changing their mind, but you're not necessarily going to be the agent of that change, okay? I've got some more resources that I'm going to post in the chat. There's one here which is about which is a really good set of resources for people whose English is not their first language. So if you're in a bind and you need to give someone a written resource, or you want to WhatsApp them a PDF or a screenshot image or something in the language that they speak about COVID vaccination, that Doctors of the World website has got loads of community languages. and it stresses the importance of seconds and lays out the evidence as to why vaccines work, what they do, how safe they are, all that sort of stuff. So they're really good guides, and they've been really helpful in working with asylum seeking communities and refugees in Wakefield district. So I'll just encourage you to take a look at them, and you might find you need them if you're in a pinch. So because you're offering Pfizer, this might not be so relevant, but I'll post it anyway just for your interest. Here is a really good guide by Public Health England about risk benefits with rare blood clots, so with CSVT and stuff like that. But because you're offering Pfizer, you're going to be in a bit of a better position because there isn't that risk associated with Pfizer to rare blood clots, to CSVT and stuff like that. I feel like I have spoke at 100 miles an hour for ages now. Is there any questions? Do you want to turn your mics off or post stuff in the chat, and let's have a chat about how this is going to work on Wednesday and any concerns that you might have? Hello.
I've never known. I'll be so quiet.
Yeah. Have I wowed you with science, or have I bored you to tears? That's the question. I've posted my email address in the chat, so if there is any feedback that you want to give me about this training, please go ahead. So yes, my understanding is that I will forward. Sorry, Jess. So I will forward on, and my understanding is that there is going to be a script that's being developed for you by Jenny at the minute.
Yeah, Jenny will be bringing that in the morning.
Yeah,
I've got a questionnaire and all sorts to hand out as well. We will give plenty of information out. We won't just make you go out blind tomorrow morning giving this info.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I'll. Oh, thank you. Yeah, also, you know, do have a look at the resources that I've posted. I will forward on stuff from the CCG as well, and then perhaps that can be disseminated amongst your team. Can people have Pfizer as second jab if they've had the first? No. Is the short answer on that at the moment. So yeah, really they can have their if they've had AZ, then the evidence suggests that it is safe for them to continue with AZ because all the rare blood clot stuff comes in with the first dose, and they should take their second dose of AZ as instructed at their appointment, so that if they can't be mixing them. So yeah, but many people haven't had their first dose yet, particularly amongst that younger cohort. So those are people who you're likely to be targeting as you're doing your door knocking. People who are a bit younger, you know, the under 30s cohort, where Pfizer is strongly recommended now. Pfizer or Moderna. Any more for any more? Oh, got someone, Alfie's typing something. Oh, nice one. Right. Well, thank you very much for your time. I will figure out how to send this recording so Jenny gets to see it. If you do feel like providing feedback, you know, good, bad or ugly, I've got thick skin, I'm a big boy, please do send it to the email address above. And I'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your sunny bank holiday weekend. So thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, Pat, for doing that. That's
no worries.
been
Good
great.
luck.
Thank you.
Someone let me know how it goes.
Oh, we will do. I think we've got to catch up. Have we got to catch up tomorrow lunchtime?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So we'll yeah. Hopefully it'll be a positive experience.
Yeah, fingers crossed for you.
Definitely. But no, thank you ever so much.
Keep your chin up, everybody. All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.